Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Soil Matters. My brother Leighton, we have a little bit of a problem with Dennis. It seems that there's some major storms happening down in Maine, and he's got trees all over the place and electrical lines down. So I think what we're going to do, my friend, is going to be you and me, and we'll see if Dennis can make it on. If he gets some power back, he'll jump on. But other than that, I think you and I should, I haven't had a chance to ask you questions really on the show that I would like to ask. So I think we're going to do that, and we'll see how our audience is, and hopefully the audience has some questions directly for you or myself. But let's start with, kind of a where are things with let's start with Kyle the farmer. We haven't heard from him since I think February last year. How are things progressing with his farm and Fish Brew and how they're doing?
Wow, okay. That's a conversation for sure. And yeah, I did see the storms were brewing out east. I didn't know how bad they were, but go figure, right? It's that time of year.
Yep.
So let me start by saying that Poe and I are now father, or he's the brother of a new puppy dog, a rescue. We pulled him out of a shelter. He was pulled out of a kill shelter, thank God, and brought into a foundation where he and his brother lived since I think it was August or maybe July. And his brother got adopted, so he's been alone for a number of months now, and so I may have to either dismiss myself for a few, or kill it, depending on how if he gets really crazy. So it's his first day here, and Poe has adjusted really well. The reason we got him was about 2 months ago. Poe started acting really funny, and I reached out to the trainer and I said, hey, he seems depressed. He's not playing. He comes out, has breakfast, and then goes back in and hides under the bed. I really don't know what to do. And the conversation escalated, and I eventually brought up, hey, do you think it's, due to, Pauline's passing this time of the year? And could he be feeling some of that emotion? And she tended to think that probably wasn't it, but then she wound it up saying, well, look at Leighton, if you're feeling it, then he's feeling it. And I was like, well, hello, how could I not? Christmas was ever since the divorce. I've loathed the holiday seasons. That was a big kick to who I was. I was a family man, right? And of course, my wife would always play victim, and so the children would always spend the holidays with her. So I never got them on the holidays. So the holidays are a tough time for a lot of people, for a lot of different reasons. But maybe that'll inspire other people to understand they're not alone in this time of year, and that they just got to try to find a solution to the issue, whatever that
winter blues.
Yeah, the seasonal depression, all of that stuff. It's real, it's real. And I think that we can have conversations about that now, where it used to be very, very taboo to even, bring these things up. But anyway, moving on. So we have a new puppy in the house. He may be a problem, but let's keep our fingers crossed, and with any luck, Dennis will pop on. But in the meantime, I'd be happy to update you. So our first year with Kyle, he did equal to harvest versus NPK field that he put into production, which was amazing, with one application of Fish Brew. So he applied it as a side dress. All right. So a side dress means that the planter plants a row of corn, and this machine comes along after it with a little plow that opens up the soil, and he sprayed it in, and then it has a closer, so it closes back over. This is how they called side dressing nitrogen for different crops. So he used instead of doing it at planting, he had to come back, he had to plant, let the corn come up a little bit so he knew where his rows were, and then side dress it. So it's an extra step. So this spring we started talking about delivery methods, and perhaps he could deliver it in another method that he could do it at the time of planting, so that he didn't have to do a second trip into the fields. And remember, these are hundreds of acres, so that I'm making it sound easy, but it's not. It's days of labor and tons of diesel. So I turned him on to a trick that I used back east in hay farm, and that was sprays. We had a boom sprayer. It sprayed it. The tractor ran down the aisles and on the grass. It was no big deal. And he goes, "Yeah, Leighton, I don't think the spray method is the best. I think we need to get it, into the soil." And I said, "Well, have you ever thought of just dragging drip tubes, from the boom, so that now it's not misting, it's not going into the atmosphere, it's just getting dribbled right on the soil?" Yeah. And he's like, "No, but that's a great idea." So he and Robbie, his mechanic, spent a good couple months rebuilding and playing with this giant boom. I mean, we're not talking like 18 feet. I think it was like 60 feet or 40 feet. I mean,
I think the 40 is about the standard on one of those big sprayers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's no joke. And so getting the delivery and distribution equal was a huge challenge. They were valving stuff and trying to keep the pressure equal so that everybody got the same amount, because otherwise you're going to get real heavy in one place and almost none in the other. Yeah. So that was a couple-month challenge to get to that point. And they achieved it. Their tenacity there, the farm boys, they're not fucking around.
Yeah, and, right.
Yeah, they rock, man. They rock. They'll take whatever they got and figure it out. So they figured it out, and they went ahead and applied and planted. Mm-hmm. And then it was time to wait. And the initial indications were really good that this was going to be a very bountiful year. But then I had him do a soil test to just check the biologicals to make sure. And that's Andy. We got to get her on the show at some point too in the future. But the test came back pretty negative. We had, instead of the first year, we had 80,000+ beneficial protozoa per milliliter or per micro unit or what unigram of soil, which is a good number. This year we only had 8.
Ooh, that's low.
That's a big step in the wrong direction. And so I immediately got on the phone with Kyle. Like, all right, what's going on? What happened? And, we went back and forth, trying to figure out what the reason was that we had this problem. And I think that, what's up, Jeff? I think that it came down to a misunderstanding between me and him in the fact that I assumed that this was being applied on cover crops so that there would have been something living in the soil. Then we started down the rabbit hole of, all right, where's the moisture? And he goes, well, what we do is, we usually plant with this plow, and we set the depth of that. And it's a plow that opens, and then the seed gets dropped, and then they have another tool or closer right behind it. And he goes, we usually set the depth based on, a hole that we dig to see where the moisture is in the soil. So sometimes they plant at 3 inches, sometimes it's 1 inch. It just depends on that given year and the moisture that was available in the soil at that time, at the planting time.
Right.
I didn't take that into consideration. I just assumed that the soil was moist. And he reminded me, Leighton, I can't drive on the soil if it's too moist because I'll leave ruts. And then when I go to harvest, I'm screwed. Yeah. So, this is often a situation when you're dealing with two different, entities, or not entities, but professions that are coming together to try to make something new work. And so in hindsight, what happened was the tubes were dragging along behind on the soil. They were on the soil, but the soil was hydrophobic. And so they were left to be exposed to wind and UV and sunlight, so it never penetrated. And that's why we had such a horrible delivery. So we've figured out a new way to do this effectively, like we did the first year, without doing 2 passes. Now, bless Kyle's heart, he took a huge hit this year. He was horribly depressed, or I shouldn't say he was horribly depressed, horribly frustrated. And, at one point he got to the point, he was like, I can't do this again. I'm going to have to go back to nitrogen. I can't take this kind of hit. I'm doing this to make a living, not to, give it away or do all this for nothing. And so when he started talking about that, I personally got a little depressed. I'm like, we made such great progress that first year, and to have a setback based on a misconception, misunderstanding, maybe we didn't talk enough or communicate the right way, it hurt, because he was, this was the pride and joy. He's had people come see what he had accomplished based on that. And so not only did it, strike me in the heart, and him in the heart, but, all the people that came out there, and he had a lot of people swinging by, checking his fields, and a lot of conversations with other farmers who were really genuinely interested in what he was doing.
Yes.
And so it was more than a setback. It was like a kick in the nuts. Like it stung. And so I kind of, smoothed it over, and, Kyle, you can't give up now. We've been working on this for 5 years. Just please, whatever you do, don't just go back to pure nitrogen. Let's, even if it's a hybrid, let's approach it this way. Let's say we do the 2-week test and we have the same results on the protozoa, which I don't believe we will, because we have a new delivery method. But say we do, say we do have a fourth delivery, and you have a choice. You can deliver again, or you could side dress with nitrogen, and I'll leave that up to you. It's your farm, it's your business. I'm only here as a consultant to support you and hopefully help you move into a non-synthetic environment. And so in all of those conversations, out came the fact that he actually did have one field that had 300 bushel per acre, which is astounding. I mean, the best guys get is 220 an acre. And that was with biology. But the difference was that soil was not hydrophobic, and it was a different type of soil. It had a lot less clay in it. They call it black dirt out there. I would call it a silty soil, not right, because they call it because of the color, but I call it that because of what's actually in it. It's basically sandy silt, not clay silt, and a
lot more organic matter in it.
Well, there's definitely more organic matter for sure, and easier for the biology to penetrate. And on that field, we did have very good biological reports. I forget what the number was, but the interesting thing it took me down a rabbit hole that I had forgotten about. So there's this company called Earthfort that Dr. Lane Ingham started back in the 80s or 90s. It was her first, the world's first biological assay to better understand what part or how powerful the soil food web was in situ, in soil, in place. So this isn't in a lab. This is taking soil samples from any one location or multiple locations and sending them in, and then having them go through a series of protocols, and eventually comes back with a sheet that shows you what your bacteria are, what the level. Now, again, we're not into species, we're not into specifics, just overall. This is your biologicals, and that's very big diversity. So, and I won't get into the diversity conversation, because that's where we're going with the ecosphere, which we'll get into later in the conversation. But bottom line, it told you your bacteria level, it told you your fungi, and they had active and inactive, which was kind of a nice feature. And then it said the F to B ratio. Then they got into protozoa. So that's where you see ciliates, which are the bad guys, and amoeba and flagellates. And so the theory was, if you figured out how many flagellates, or not, maybe not flagellates, but protozoa. So, and again, we're talking about the aerobic protozoa. If you got ciliates, then you didn't usually have very high nutrient cycling protozoa. Not that ciliates don't, but it's a different animal. So bottom line was that you would have an understanding of your fertility, your soil's fertility. And by that, I mean the pounds of nitrogen available or released over a 90-day period. And the reason they chose 90 days was because most crops are within 90 days. So you plant them and you harvest them. And so in honesty, I mean, that was a great approach to better understanding what the farmer or the client could expect for a result of their soil condition.
a potential, basically.
Well, no, this isn't potential. This is real. I mean,
Okay.
it's not that it's the full potential, because and I can get into that in a minute too, because they do have a methodology that does show the potential. So in many ways, you have to be very careful in understanding that that test that they did was showing the potential. Now, what is the chances of nature reaching that full potential? It varies tremendously. Weather, everything comes into factor. So ideally, that's probably not the best methodology, because you're showing what could happen, but you're not saying this is what's going to happen. Right. But I think the point I'm trying to make was that they came up with this algorithm, this formula, to better understand, based on what's there, its potential, then you can count on this to be what would be released. And so it became very beneficial to a lot of farmers, because they could say, oh, I have this potential, so I'm going to cut my nitrogen in half, or I'm going to cut it by 2/3, because I trust Elaine and I trust the system, and it works, right? It worked. So it gave the farmer another tool to decide whether they only used whatever less they needed based on the potential of their soil.
Right.
So in my mind, that was a very valuable formula. It was just that one piece, the potential nitrogen released over a night.
Cheers, Smiley.
Hey, what's up, Smiley? So reel it forward to this year. When Kyle and I were having that conversation, I started saying, all right, I got to go back in my records and find, what that looked like, the Earth Fort versus present day soil food web consultants, because it's a different testing methodology. At Earth Fort, they take the sample as soon as it comes in, they freeze it, they stop it in time. Okay. And when they're ready to look at it, they warm it up, they feed it foods, so they give it the potential, the best potential environment that could happen. And that's important to understand, because when you have cysts, they don't show up on the soil food report as a cyst. So if you don't unlock that, you don't know what the potential could be. If you watered it right, it got the right amount of sun, etc. So I totally understand the methodology and understand that tool was so important to bring forth to the world at that point in time. Yeah. Could you reel it back and take another approach where maybe you don't freeze it, but you look at it right away? I mean, the new protocols they have basically, I think it's 5 days they're supposed to look at the samples within. And Elaine has, to her credit, has done a lot of work since the Earth Fort days in trying to move this testing methodology along to better gain access to this information. So if you understand that the difference between these two testing methodologies, but you take some of the best of both, in other words, that original formula of how many protozoa you have to the potential nitrogen release, and you fast forward it to today's time frame, and you look at, okay, when I look under the microscope, I'm not looking at potential. I'm not looking at cysts. None of the cysts have been awoken. They're all in a cyst form. So I'm not going to count them, right? So now you say, well, I found these live. So they are not potential. They're there, all right?
Right.
So if I apply the old formula to the new methodologies, I would get a solid answer as to what I can expect to be released over a 9-day period. So I poured back through Kyle's records. I poured back through my early Earth Fort tests, and started to correlate a relationship between their methodology, or what it showed at protozoa on their report, to how they calculated the pounds per acre of nitrogen release. And then I fast forward, I applied it to Kyle's stuff, and I said, Kyle, I'm going to send you these reports because I think this shows us, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if we can deliver and get to that 80,000 protozoa per unigram, that we will get this release based on last year's test. I mean, that was hard data. We know that was real. And so he got excited again, and that's when we really started diving down this new delivery methodology. But now I understand about how he sets the depth based on the moisture that's there, and how that's worked for them for eons. That's what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have that conversation before that. So anyway, he had one field that hit it out of the park, but his main acres were horribly ineffective, and in the end, he lost some money. So he's not in a great place. He's not really ready to come forward with the data. Now, I encouraged him to say, "Hey, let's just look at that one small field, and let's the data on that. How much did you pay for the fish brew and anything else you added to that small plot? And let's do the numbers on that and approach it that way." But he really wasn't comfortable in doing that, and I can understand it's skewing the data. Yeah. But as long as you're upfront about it, right, it shouldn't be an issue. But again, I'm going to let Kyle do Kyle, and if he's uncomfortable talking about it, that's fine. Because I know now that if we do deliver properly and we show the test results through Andy, then we know confidently we're going to be all set. And he still has the option to apply something else if he needs to, and he gets uncomfortable during the process. So Kyle's on basically a gap year.
A reset.
Yeah. He's on a reset. But, I mean, we learned a lot. I mean, any farmer in the future that does go this methodology, we just saved them years of freaking trial and error, right? Yeah. Talk about an asset. And, hopefully he does get some recognition for all of the time, money, and energy that he's put into trying to understand how to properly and responsibly deliver biology on large acres of land. Because if he can do it for a few hundred acres, 500 acres, bam. Now you look at these 10,000 acre farms, 100,000 acre farms, they can just jump in and follow that protocol, and they're good to go. So,
well, and that's the thing, is setting up the SOPs, and you're not understanding the farm mentality, and what they were doing was a major disconnect. Now that you do, it's much easier to move forward from there.
Yeah, and move forward with a little bit more confidence, right? I mean, he and I both lacked confidence until we unraveled that understanding, that relationship of how critical the protozoas are. I mean, you hear me talking about nutrient cycling all the time, and how critical it is, but there's still a little bit of a disconnect when you don't understand farming SOPs versus, me delivering compost extract to an existing landscape. Big difference. Bare field versus field with plants, or landscape with plants. It's a lot more challenging. So lesson learned, and kudos to him for pulling us up by the bootstraps and jumping back on the horse and getting ready to charge in spring. Like, I've been having conversations with him all morning, and almost every other day for the last month, trying to iron, or actually probably more than a month, probably a couple of months anyway, trying to unlock all these keys. So I would expect him to be a year from now, he'll be on, and we'll probably have some really amazing data, because now we've both got old data, inappropriate data, and appropriate data. So that one is to be continued.
Well, how was he? I know they had the drone they were using to do foliars. Did they try that at all, or was it too late for that?
All right. So the drone is for foliar.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're planting, you're obviously not using foliar. And then once the plants come up, yes, he did apply some foliar, but it's not enough to impact that initial punch. Yeah. And so he chased the dragon, so to say, but he couldn't catch the dragon because it was too late. The dragon was gone. It was over the horizon. Yeah. So did the drone help? Oh, absolutely. It definitely. If he hadn't have done the drone, then he'd be way worse than he ended up being. And he did apply some other goodies called Ion, which is actually really interesting with beans. It provides more stalks, more flowers, more beans. Like even normally they'll get 2 soybeans and a little one that doesn't matter. It doesn't have any nutrition. We actually got 3 solid beans, and each bean plant had multiple stalks. So I mean, from the ground there was 5 shoots instead of just 1. So again, building this knowledge of these new products alongside trying to unlock the nutrient cycling system. So the drone was very valuable in certain aspects. But again, it's like having a tool in the toolbox. You don't want to use a monkey wrench to pound a nail. It's not
efficient.
Not even close.
So when has Andy and that's with let me just bring up her Ecosphere Science.
No, that's Ecosphere. Andy's Rhizos.
Oh, okay.
Rhizos. She's the biological tester. She's a Soil Food Web graduate.
Right. Yeah, we had her on. She was talking about the Dallas Cowboys practice field, and how you guys were working to keep that, in balance. And we're having some problems, I think, this year with heat more than anything.
Heat, drought. He didn't get any rain, and so the salt level went through the fucking roof. The tissue was horrible. There was so much salt built up in the tissue. The grass wasn't responding the way it was supposed to. I suggested that he do a flush, kind of like cannabis growers do.
You're right.
To try to knock some of the salt off all of those cation exchange sites, because the fact that there was so much salt in the plant, we knew that the plant was pulling the salt and not because there wasn't enough other nutrition on those sites. So basically, if he applied fertilizer, it was gone. It would just wash through because there was no sites for it to attach to.
Right.
So he went ahead and did a flush, and he used products that the industry recommended, and that wreaked fucking havoc on the plant. Thank God the biology was still intact. I was so concerned. I did beg him to send out soil samples to both Efren to get mycorrhizae counts, percentage, and one off to Andy to see how bad we hurt the nutrient cycling system. We definitely knocked back the protozoa. For whatever reason, the mycorrhizae did fine. But the other biological constituents definitely got set back to some degree. But what was interesting was the plant just stopped growing. Just shut the fuck down. Nothing. And I told him to pull root samples. He did. The cores were usually 4 inches, 4+. They were down to about 2. So there had been a setback in the roots. Like they sloughed off. They freaked out, which clearly indicated by the fact that the plant wasn't growing on the surface. He said he'd mow it, but he'd get hardly any clippings in the catch basin.
Right.
So that was kind of a scary scenario. And there's a lot more to that I can't talk about right now. But if things go the way they look they're going to go, Chris will come on the show and we'll talk about all of that.
Cool.
So that's another one.
Smiley actually wanted to ask, would it be recommended to flush with some nutrient in the water to replace the sodium on the exchange sites?
Smiley, I fucking love your ass, dude. That was the approach. I got him connected with BioAg, and I said, I want you to use this Calmino. So Chris, Vic, who's the managing CEO or CFO, I'm not sure. He's high up. He's a C. And the other gentleman was Richard or Michael. He's the sales rep. And we had Josh and brain drain, puppy brain. Fucking puppy brain. Their names don't matter. They were on the recent show. So anyway, their bosses were in communication with Chris and I discussing how to move those salt ions off. And calcium was my number one choice because calcium is double bonded and salt is single bonded. So potassium and salt are very easy to flush if you have the nutrients in the delivery system. Right. So for whatever reason, I don't know whether it was political or internal pressure, which I kind of do know, but I can't say. He ended up going the traditional route instead of the Calmino. And so unfortunately, we were hoping to get a bunch of data out of that. And I parallelly did another test on a soil mix I made. I'm blending an A Horizon for a client out here, and I'm trying to hit the sweet spot. So I want to see 75% calcium. I want to see 17% magnesium and 8% potassium, and I want to see no other ions. I don't want to see any salts or anything like that. And so I've been playing with that formula. I'm on my 4th iteration at this point. But I was doing the same thing in the soils out here, both because the water has so much sodium in it, and you need water to make compost, that I was having a similar issue. I had, like 20% of my cation exchange sites were salt, and that's no good. I'm losing 20% of my bank account. And that means if I do apply a calcium product, I will bump those off, but I have to use calcium to do that. Well, calcium in the form of gypsum, I threw my fucking sulfur out of whack, right? Too much sulfur. Right. So then I started recently playing with quicklime, which is basically pure calcium, nothing else, and had great results, but I fucked my pH up.
It isn't one thing, it's another, damn it.
Damn soil chemistry is a bitch. So to answer your question, Smiley, yes, the only way you can push those guys off of the CEC sites is with a product that has a higher capacity to bond. So 2 electrons instead of 1.
Yeah, and he wanted to point out the only problem is the Calmino is pretty high nitrogen to apply as a calcium additive.
Yeah, so and I'm glad you said that, because in the experiment that I did out here, I used Calmino versus lime, or at that time it was versus gypsum. And I did see a good bump in the Calmino, but the question was it as effective as lime? And the answer is no, not even close. A lot of the Calmino, because it's in amino acid form, is a lot more mobile than the chemistry counterpart of gypsum or quicklime. I mean, it did have an effect, but it did not have the desired effect level that I wanted. So one of the things I'll be doing in the future, near future, is playing with Calmino, quicklime, and a little bit of gypsum to see if I can kind of massage in this exchange without, blowing the budget. Because again, you're dealing with money at the end of the day is the controlling or limiting factor. So if I just use pure Calmino, I'd spend a fortune. I'd get a response, but was the response economically viable? And probably not. So again, the work continues.
Well, and it's a never-ending process, isn't it? I mean, come on. The more we learn, the more we realize we don't know anything yet.
Ain't that the fucking truth? And that nature in infinite beauty and wisdom, it can be a bitch, right? She can fucking be a real bitch.
Oh, so, yeah.
Any one of these environmental changes, too moist, not enough moisture, too high pH, too low pH, all affect the chemistry and the biology. So you're juggling all these 3 things and praying to God that you had your hand in the right place to catch the ball when it comes down, or fuck, there goes that experiment out the window.
Yeah. The more we know, the less you know. Yeah. And then, of course, Shearer says, my goal is no money in, just sweat equity, which is really what the goal of most of us is.
Yeah, I think that it's not no money, it's comfort. Like I have this good friend, dear friend, Craig Trester, who I've been bugging to get on the show for probably 5 months now. He will eventually. Recently he's gone through some transitions. Well, I should say not recently. Over the last 3 years, he's gone through a lot of transitions. And one of the things that I tried to beat into his head was, at the end of the day, access is more valuable than money.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, if you have all your friends have Lear jets and big yachts and mansions and lifestyles that everybody dreams of affording, and you don't, but you have access to them and they share with you, well, guess what? You win. You don't have to pay for all that shit. You don't have to maintenance it. You don't have to worry about it, but you get to have access to it. You get to use it. You're going to enjoy it way more than they are because they have to worry about, oh, fuck, it's broken down. Oh, this is going to cost. Oh, I got to earn more money. Oh, right? All the responsibilities. Like I love this saying, what you own owns you.
Yes.
And so one of the main reasons I swore off possession after getting divorced was I had fucking all the possessions in the world. I just didn't have time to use any of them. I did when I could, but it wasn't like I was, hanging out at my beach house all summer long, So it taught me a really valuable lesson about how much is enough, right? What do you really fucking need? And then at the end of the day, all you need is a roof, food, and shelter, and clothes and simple things. Like, I'm not saying don't own a house. I'm not saying don't buy a fancy car. That's fine, do you? But the keep that in the back of your mind that the more possessions you have, the more you are owned by those possessions, or at least enslaved to them. And so maybe try to take a different approach on what is being programmed to all of us. And that is, oh, you deserve 2 cars. You deserve a mansion. You deserve this. No, you don't deserve anything. But just remind yourself, what do you really need? And then that way you'll appreciate what you have way more than if you just keep replacing toy after toy after toy, because the old toy is no fun anymore. It's boring and it's just sitting there collecting dust in your garage.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go down the philosophy of friggin' rabbit hole.
And that's okay, because like a lot of us understand that it's like the new thing in the cannabis industry for nutrients, etc. Everybody jumps on the new thing because it's new,
right?
And most of the time, it's just a new name on the old frickin' packaging.
Exactly. I mean, we talked about that with fertilizers. They just changed the fucking bag. The formula's the same every fucking time.
Yeah.
They just perceive you're buying something different.
Well, it's like when Joshua was on from BioAg, he could buy the exact same thing for $50 a bag, and the other guy was selling it for $500 a bag because of the industry he was selling it to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's always a way around.
Exactly. I would rather go, like I go to the farm store to buy stuff. I don't go to the hydro store to buy stuff. I get the exact same thing and it's 1/10 of the cost.
Here's the star of the show.
Hey, Popo.
Who's that? You say hi to Ken? Say hi to Ken? He's still like, oh, what's going on with this? He's so excited. His behavioral change really beneficial once the puppy came into play. So he's definitely more playful. I know. He's coming to show me his bone. He's a lot more playful. I know. I see you got your bone. I see you got.
Well, and he's got competition for Daddy's attention now.
I know. Yeah, it was more about like getting him active again. Ever since the puppy got here, he's been a lot more playful. He's now again behind my chair, next to my, like sitting next to me on the chair, the way he used to be 2 months prior. So it's. Oh, you hear the little guy?
Yes, I do. He's going, hey, he's getting attention. Why am I not getting attention?
Yeah, well, you're getting crate trained, Cheeto. Can you believe his name, Cheeto?
There's a new puppy in the house. Leighton's in trouble, okay?
Yeah, my life went upside down. Smiley, Poe's been depressed for the last couple of months, and I had to do something because he's not being himself. He's not being happy. And, I want him to have the best life he can have. Pauline will strike me in the ass with some lightning if I don't. Trust me.
Yes, exactly. So where should we go from here? What's another good question for Mr. Morrison's mind?
There was just one up here. Let me see if I can find it. These things go by so quick. Here we go. So years of chemical fertilization, how deep does it go? All right, this is something that it's really important to understand. There is what we call a NPK pool in the soil. So not all of it is mobile enough to wash out, but what is mobile enough to wash out is catastrophically destroying our streams, rivers, lakes, Gulf of Mexico, you name it, all of the Mother Earth's uteruses. So any major harbor, Chesapeake Bay, Puget Sound, and I can go on and on and on. And the Gulf of Mexico happens to be one of the biggest. But prior to mass use of NPK, those places were fertility gold mines. There was just so much food and fish and bait and you name it in those places. They were Mother Earth's uteruses. Yeah. So when you talk about nutrient mobility, you're talking about the stuff that's able to travel down into the soil profile, into the groundwater, and then eventually make it out into the waterways. So a lot of it makes it into the waterways. Obviously, you know what the catastrophic effects that we've had on this planet so far based on that simple bit of information of what's getting into the waterways. Beyond that, there's still a lot more fertility in the soil. Technically, like I know Elaine will talk on this, that based on how many pounds per acre farmers are sold, I use that word very carefully, sold to use, because the fertilizer companies know a certain bit of it's going to go away. And the rest of it is, well, I want to make more money too. So I'm going to tell the farmer he needs 10 pounds per acre, not 5 pounds per acre.
Right.
So technically, we don't need anything more. We literally could live for hundreds of years on the nutrient pool that is present in the existing soil. And to some degree, we kind of unlocked a little bit of that with Kyle. Like, yeah, we had those high levels of protozoa, but he also had high levels of fertility in the plant based on the chemistry pool. Now, did we deplete the chemistry? Fuck no. Do we knock it back a notch? Yes. And we have the data that shows that. So based on what we knocked it back, you can project out, oh yeah, he's probably never need another bit for 100 years if the biology can do what it needs to do. But at the end of the day, farmers all live on fear. Like, hey, if I put all that time, I mean, I'm going to work for 3 months straight, my ass off. And if there's no payday at the end of that, I'm fucked. I'm going to lose the farm. No joke, right? Yeah. I'm going to lose the lease. I'm going to lose my equipment. So they're always going to, I shouldn't say always. Right now, they're probably going to fall back if they have a setback. Whereas if they had the confidence and the complete understanding, they would understand that they don't need that anymore. It's just a matter of figuring out, unlocking the key, or not the key, unlocking the lock to those bound up nutrients in that nutrient pool that is present in the soil system. So that was a long-winded answer, but that's in a nutshell. Yeah, there's still tons of nutrient in the soil, even though a shit ton of it got washed into the waterways.
Well, it's just the biology needs to be there to break it out of the sand, silt, and clay that actually exists in the soil structure, because it's most of your micro and macronutrients are in the sand, silt, and clay already.
Yeah, absolutely. And even on top of that, there's still tied up nutrient from years of fertilization. And it's just, exactly. You can't unlock it. I mean, phosphorus is a great example of that. Organic phosphorus is impossible to break down without aquatic microbes that are phosphate solubilizing bacteria. We know what is it? Mammoth P. I mean, his claim to fame was he isolated 5 different phosphate solubilizing bacteria as part of his PhD, and then went on to patent it and produce these in lab, and they work great. But again, the difference between in vivo, which means coming out of nature, versus in vitro is that the in vivo ones will colonize, where the in vitro ones will only live for a certain period of time in that soil system because they're not equipped to survive. Yeah. They're only equipped to stay alive for so long, and then they get wiped out.
Yeah. So we've got a good one here for you. Should you see water in the catch tray in the horizontal system, or does that mean it's overwatered? As my system matured, I noticed the water retention is much better.
That's the whole thing. You've created microaggregates or macroaggregates. So those aggregates are little universes. And inside those little universes, there's waterfalls, there's lakes, there's ponds, there's streams, there's humidity, there's probably rain to some degree. So those little communities, those little, for lack of better words, again, the aggregates, right, are their own environments. So everything is being recycled within that. And that's why you don't need as much water once you get those aggregates. I mean, that's how nature survives through droughts, because it doesn't rain. Well, how are they surviving? Aggregates. Everything's being recycled until the next time that the moisture comes and replenishes everything. So yes, you're absolutely going to see a decrease in water requirements in the horizontal system over time. Does it mean that because you have water in the horizontal system, that you're overwatering? No, it's just that's your groundwater. But if you want to be focus more on biomimicry, then you want to let it dry back a little bit too. And that's the beauty of having that horizontal system, is that as the soil top drains out or dries out, it creates a pressure that sucks moisture up from the bottom. So the A horizon acts as a pump, pulling water from your E and pushing it back up through osmotic pressure. And so that's it. It relieves the over underwatering pressure that a traditional soilless medium would require. But I would tell you this: if you constantly have a water supply in the E, stop watering. Let it go. I mean, I had a client call me and said he went away for, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks on vacation. He watered it until it filled up to the E, till the E started leaking out of the shower pan. Right. Have to beat this into everyone's head. If you're going to go horizontal, you have to put a shower pan under there. And that pan has to be 1/4 inch lower than the bottom of your A horizon, because you do not want your A horizon sitting in water. It will go anaerobic very quickly. So that's why the E horizon pan, shower pan, is 1/4 inch lower than the bottom of your A. So no matter how much you overwater it, it's going to leak out before it turns the A horizon into an anaerobic mud. So that being said, if you're watering and you're seeing constantly water dripping out of the E horizon, you can't overwater this system if you've set it up correctly. But what that's telling you is you don't need more water. You need to let it go, let it dry down, and to a point where either you don't see any water in there, or when you stick your finger in there, the sand isn't moist. That would be considered a total dry bath. And again, that's why we use sand, because once you can no longer physically see the water, you stick your finger down in that sand, move it around so you can see the bottom of the pan, and you don't see water, the sand should still be moist. But what that's telling you is now it's time to water, because you've dried back to a point where now you're pulling from your reserves, the moisture that's being held in the sand. And again, I love this experiment. I wish more people would do it. But if you take a bucket of sand, figure out the volume, add water to that, your mind is going to be blown at how much water you can actually put in that bucket of sand. So that shows you the water storage capacity sand has. Then take the bucket, flip it over onto a tarp, and let it dry out. Watch how long it takes till the center of that bucket, the lump, the sand castle you made. Wait till how long to see how long it takes that to dry out. 100%. It's amazing how well sand holds water, as well as helps it drain. It's cool shit.
And then you look at like Tom Landry, he's doing bottom watering because he's filling that bottom tray, and he's allowing the osmotic pressure to draw it up into the system.
Yeah.
I don't know he's really doing much for top watering at all on his systems.
He said he does occasionally top water when he just has the feeling that he needs to, biomimic a little bit more. But no,
Yeah.
he purely relies on the osmotic pressure to pull the soil horizontal system to function as a water pump.
Yeah, like the aquifer that the bottom horizon is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's doing its job.
So Indigo Doug O,
That
do you
looks
think
like
we can?
that looks like friggin' Cheeto.
Well, there you go. Do you think we can do something like Terra Preta today on a modern scale? I guess compost deep inside.
I think he's referring to clay pot technology, terra preta, or is he talking about the jungles down in Colombia
He's
where
talking. I would say the jungles down in Colombia where they found the different aspects of Terra Preta outside of the cities that
the
used to
black
exist.
dirt? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are still not 100% sure. Was that intentional or was that a dump site? Right? We don't know for sure how that came about. And so if we knew that, even if it was verbally, verbal history, we could better understand whether that was something intentional or unintentional. And if we knew that, that would help a lot. But remember, that is how old? How many thousands of years? How old are you? How long do you live? I mean, yeah, if you want to pay it forward, sure. We build these. Whether again, was it a waste of the system? I mean, don't get me going on waste streams, right?
Yeah, no doubt, eh?
Oh, I could just go on for months about how to better utilize all of the waste streams that we create. It's unfortunate that the money controls that, and the money doesn't want to lose their power or their money, so they're not going to give up control of it. They don't give a fuck about you and me. So I think to answer your question is, yeah, if you want to pay it forward, you can make biochar, bury that with microbes. You can, like I've said in the past, like food waste. Dude, go outside with a post hole digger, dig a hole as deep as you possibly can, put your yard waste in there and always cover it with a little bit of dirt and then put a trash can lid over it with a rock on it. And then once that thing is filled 3/4 full, top it off with the soil you dug out, plant it with some grass or a bush, whatever, and then go dig another one and do that all over your yard. Everybody in the world could, or everybody in America could get rid of all food waste that ends up in the waste streams by just doing that one simple thing. You don't need anything on your fucking counter making compost or anaerobically digesting your food waste. Put it in the ground, but make sure you put it deep enough that you're not going to bring in all these pests, flies and friggin', rats and all of the things that you don't want.
Yeah.
And as long as you're burying it, that's fine. I mean, damn, when I grew up, everybody had a little concrete ring with a lid on it that you stepped on it and the lid popped up. All the food waste went in there and you closed it and that was it. And the worms and the bugs and everything ate it up and it was gone. It never filled up. So again, we had these practices in the past, but there's no money in that, right? There's only benefit to the person dumping their shit in there. But we're all so busy working and trying to catch up and earn money and keep up and all these distractions and freaking drama and pressure. We don't take the time to do the things that we did 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Was common practice. Everybody had one of these things. Nobody dumped food waste.
Well, yeah, we used to have a bucket underneath the sink, and any waste would go into there. When it got full, you take it out, and there it would go into the garden space, and that way it was going back into the soil.
We did it one step further. We had burn pits. Like my job as a little boy was to bring the cardboard and the paper outside and put it in a barrel and light it in fire, and then take the ashes and spread it on the lawn or the bushes or whatever.
We had that for the solid material, like the stuff that could burn, the The stuff that could break down went to the garden, and everything else went to the burn barrel. Like, I'm a country boy, so we didn't have, coming out to pick up the garbage,
right?
Like you wanted to take garbage in, you took it to the garbage dump in the back of the pickup truck, and you took a full load, and it was all scrap that you couldn't use.
Right. Metals and other things, glass. That you, like you said, you couldn't recycle into something usable, like a mason jar or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, these are societal shifts that have pushed us all into the paradigm of slavery that we are now. We have to pay to get rid of our waste. Like I told you, when I moved out here to California and I saw that everybody had these green giant toters stuffed with organic matter from their property, I was like, what the fuck is this? Why aren't you composting it in your backyard? Oh, we don't have a backyard. So what? Build a fucking bioreactor, right? Anybody can do this. Why are you paying to get rid of that? Oh, we pay taxes for that. Well, you could probably apply to be tax exempt because you're not getting rid of that, right? Or at least a share of it. Nobody wants to fucking listen. Instead, it goes to giant fucking grinders, ground up, turned into GOM, and then literally dumped. And they're making a fucking fortune doing it because they're getting paid by the state, they're getting paid by the pickup companies, and they're getting paid by the town themselves. The counties have to pay it. So they're getting paid 3 fucking ways to get rid of it. Get rid of your shit you could just put in your backyard.
And put organic matter back in so you can start having water retention.
Right.
Building the aggregates again and have abundance. They don't want that.
It's crazy. It's fucking crazy.
Which actually leads us in because we're talking waste. How is Mo and the crew over there?
Wow, what a fucking roller coaster ride. It has been an insane few months. Had a major setback at the facility. It was set up in up and around Santa Cruz. Crazy shit went down. The machine almost got impounded. They got it back. But it was like horrible. Like everybody was depressed. Mo was fucking pissed at the world. And, I was obviously hurt and bummed out because, I was in the middle of the preliminary DNA sampling. So I ended up going up there, even though the machine was shut off inappropriately. I didn't know how well the bio bed would have sustained. I took a risk, drove fucking 5 hours up there, praying the whole fucking time that the bio bed and the output would still be viable. They hadn't, gone completely anaerobic and fucked up. Fortunately, I was able to pull the samples. The bio bed was still in good shape, which is, again, a testimony to how well this system functions. Even having the power cord ripped out of it, it still maintained itself for a period of time, which is, again, imagine someone on a heart-lung machine, you pull the plug, fucking gone. Right? Well, we expected that to pretty much kind of happen. Like Mo never gone through this where someone had just ripped the plug out and shut the machine off when it was in the middle of sustaining itself. So needless to say, out of that horribly depressing and upsetting scenario, Ron, their principal, who I love this guy to death, was like, he started running around talking to other people, and he set up a couple appointments for me to talk to, these groups up there that might be interested in. One of them was a professor at a local college up there. Now, again, this is the first time I've ever experienced this type of college. It's more like a trade school. So what these kids do is they go there to be farmers, but they're taught carpentry, they're taught plumbing, they're taught electricity, they're taught soil, they're taught fertilizer, they're taught plants, they're taught crops, rotating. Everything across the board. This is the kind of college all colleges should be. You should leave college with the ability to survive and thrive, not have to go take a job that doesn't have anything to do with what you just learned, but more importantly, giving you tools that you can survive in the real world and thrive and move ahead, not just sustain. I hate the word sustain. Sustain means stay the same all the time. No, we need
flatline.
Grow. Right. You flatline. It's dead. Flatline. That's sustain. So, needless to say, this one professor connected them to an intern, or not an intern, a student who had taken on a internship with a company that I can't tell you right now, but it's a big motherfucking company. And she was brought on, or she interns at this facility to basically, she was encouraged to bring in R&D ideas. All right. So it's not your typical internship. She was brought in as an intern, yes, to work at this facility and learn the ins and outs of this as part of her degree at that college. But the company said to her, hey, on top of interning here, we are always looking for new ideas, new methods, new techniques for our business. And we would like you, while you're here doing your work, to also look into this and make suggestions, come to, your managers with ideas, like, hey, go dream. I mean, I love this place. Fucking love this. So she found the Muncher.
Cool.
She introduced the Muncher to this monster company. Monster company says, oh, this is an interesting concept. I know what anaerobic digester is, but I've never heard of an aerobic digester. So let's have a conversation. Well, that conversation went so well that the Muncher got moved from the Nightmare site right directly to their site, which was like 20 miles down the road, not even, and opened up a fucking door, which, all right, some of this, I should be really careful about what I say, but what I am going to say, what I know for fact is that this machine has shown the ability to break down THC. Yeah, that's no joke. I mean, that's a fucking pretty hard molecule to destroy. You could smoke it, right? That's great, but you destroyed it, right? It goes to CBN, it does all these other things, but the molecule's still there. So to get rid of that molecule is not an easy thing to do. Or I should say, it's not an inexpensive thing to do. Okay. So we had, as part of the work that we were doing up there, part of the, can I say this? I think I can. Part of the problem with this company is their waste stream. All right. Yeah. They have to pay X amount a ton for their waste product because it does have a lot of pesticides in it. Right. So their cost per ton is based on the pest residue that is shown through testing. So it's, this is your level, this is your cost. Okay. Come to find out that the Muncher would pay for itself in 1 year. Sweet. Because the pest panel that was extensive, to say the least, I mean, all major pesticides were on this panel. Some were non-applicable, but the ones that were applicable, all of them came back non-detected. That in itself is fucking amazing. I mean, again, there is some indications, although this I can get in trouble for, that it may break down glyphosate, but that testing needs to be replicated a number of times to verify. Yeah. And everything I just said will be replicated again to verify that that wasn't a screw up at the lab, but that was real. In science, we do everything in triplicate for that very reason, so that if you can't duplicate the experiment, then you got a problem. It didn't work. You can't make those claims. So all of this stuff will be replicated many times in the near future, and we'll verify because based on everything I understand, they freaked the fuck out when this panel came back non-detected. Yeah. Right. That should say it all. So this nightmare turned into this amazing fucking story And again, I love talking about karma, right? Everything you give will come back in the future. And if not to you, to someone that needs it or someone around you. So that's why it's good to pay it forward, to give as much as you can, because if you do it from the heart, it will come back. I'm living fucking proof of that, right? I wouldn't be here right now if that wasn't a fact.
Yeah.
So now they ran up the fucking corporate ladder so fucking fast that it was a whirlwind. It was like every day it was like, oh, we're gonna do this. Oh, we had this meeting in December 18th. I need this. We're fucking running around like maniacs trying to assemble all the data that we have, put it in a way that's comprehensible to a layperson, which is not easy, and be ready for this meeting. And then all of a sudden, a new CEO came in. The old CEO was supposed to leave at the end of this year. For whatever reason, he left early. The new CEO came in, and they went radio silent, which was a bummer. I got a little nervous. I actually called a friend of mine, so overeducated, or so well educated, I should say. I mean, he's got so many fucking degrees in economics, finance, money, you name it. He's kind of a mentor to me. And I called him, kind of heartbroken, saying, hey, look, this new CEO came in, and, all of a sudden now it's radio silent. And there was some information that I was hoping to get prior to the 18th meeting, because if for some reason things go wrong, that pest panel doesn't have the validity if we don't know what they were so excited about, like what they were using, right? We need to know that.
Yeah.
So I cried on his shoulder, and he basically said, look, just breathe. New CEOs come in all the time. He goes, this is very typical. They put a stop work, stop communicating on everything while they assess where this company is. They bring in their people. They decide what direction that they want to bring to this company. They're in charge, man. They're the captain of the ship. You can't tell the captain, no, we're going that way. The captain says, fuck you, I'm in charge. We're going this way. Yeah. So he said, just relax. If what you've told me is fact, then it's just a matter of time before the new CEO realizes what you've accomplished, what Ecosphere Sciences has accomplished. And it's kind of a no-brainer that this will be, an integral part. It pays for itself in a year. What kind of fucking ROI is that? Nobody gets that.
Yeah.
So, not to mention, it's producing a fucking fertilizer they can use, right?
Exactly. Hey, win-win, right?
So, I calmed down, and a week went by, and I had a great conversation with Ron, the principal. And I said, what's the update? I mean, it's been, radio silent for a few weeks now, and what's your gut feeling? And he goes, okay, there's a lot of stuff I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that the CEO is the meeting is going to happen next month. So he's seen the value in it. So it's back to, all right, on the roller coaster, let's go. Like, we've got to get everything back together and be ready for that meeting on mid-January. But the potential for this to go ballistic is looking very, very real. I'm very optimistic about it. So that being said, again, they're not ready to come on the show yet. I mean, they'll come on and talk about the Muncher process, but what the goodies, the sweets are is more about where they're going and what we're accomplishing. And this goes back to having Craig on the show. Now, the last time we had the Muncher crew on here, I was diving down the chemistry and the biologicals. So, and I'm talking direct microscopy, again, going through rhizosphere, having her do microscopes, looking at, what our counts are. So we got to a point where I'd assembled as much information that I could that was in my wheelhouse. I had to expand outside of my wheelhouse to other associates, friends, etc., that are parallel to what I'm doing, but interconnected. And by that, I meant DNA and RNA.
Yeah.
That's where it has to go next, because you can't take this microscopy any further. You've identified what happens, you know what you can expect, but now what is the metabolites? Again, remember, we did these tests. We did the arugula test and Muncher juice only. We did control, Muncher juice only, Muncher juice, my biology or my product, and my product. And we compared all four of these together. Well, we showed a 50% increase in wet plant biomass with just Muncher juice. That's fucking huge, right? Huge.
Oh, yeah. Fucking right, that's huge.
Right? And it was only fertilized once. Like, could you imagine if I'd fertilized it for every week for the 8 weeks that it went in trial? And it was a horrible winter last year. We had no sun, cold, tons of rain. I don't know how those plants even fucking survived. Like the control plants were pretty fucking ugly.
Yeah.
So everything was pretty ugly. All right. But still way better than the control. And then we had Billy's work where he, basically showed us that this extremely finicky cultivar threw fucking sevens very quickly after being exposed to Muncher juice.
Yeah, Margie's.
Right. So we know we have plant hormone, plant growth promoters, plant growth regulators. Those are three fucking killer things. I mean, look at all the products on the market saying, "Oh, we do this, we do that." Right? If you could do that for what we're taking a waste stream and convert it into a product that is very expensive that does that, holy shit. Well, how do you know what metabolites you're creating? What secondary, tertiary, and beyond metabolites you're creating that create these proteins folding to create these different plant reactions? I mean, you start going down proteins and amino acids and all of the interactions and reactions that occur, it gets fucking complicated. So the only way to unfold, like, all right, what does this atom do to this protein to make it fold in that direction instead of this direction, or makes all of them fold in different directions simultaneously, right? That is the only place you can get that information is going through RNA and DNA, because now you can directly correlate this message that is given to this bacteria or protozoa and instructions on how to do certain actions or interactions or reactions.
Right.
And that's all of those are important to understand. It's not just one thing. It's multiple different ways to look at it. So I brought in Craig. I said, Craig, I know you're very familiar and comfortable in the bioinformatics world. I'm going to get you a stipend, and I want to create a study group, a community that we start to really unwind a lot of this stuff. And again, like as a general contractor, I don't need to know everything about someone's job, but I have to know enough, especially at this level, to be capable to walk in and say, you're fucking up or you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
I'm the general contractor. I'm in charge. If I hire a subcontractor who's an idiot and is fucking everybody else's work up because they're too lazy to take the time to think, well, I can't put it here. The HVAC guy needs this, or the plumber needs that big because it's right next to the kitchen sink. I can't put all my shit in here. That's the GC's job, is to protect against these interactions that cause nightmares in construction. And if you've been in the construction industry, there are a fuck ton of nightmares because the GC wasn't there doing his job.
Yeah.
So I'm the GC. I'm trying to, head up the consulting wing of Ecosphere Sciences and taking them to the next level to create valuation. By that, I mean, what is the Muncher unit worth? Well, nobody knows because we don't have enough data to say what it can or cannot do. We know it gets rid of food waste, right? So it has value in the fact that it can take this food waste and turn it into something disposable or usable in X amount of time. So there's some value there. But once you start getting into, okay, the output has value, that's a whole nother ballgame. And that's what they've hired me or that's why they pay me is to understand the value of the output, because we already know the front side. We know what it's worth based on what it can do. But what if there was this whole value added thing? That's a whole nother ball game. That increases the value of what they've created and what they've built. And that's good for them. I mean, we want them to be successful. The more successful they are, the more these machines will get out, and the better humanity will be as a whole because of what they've created.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So bring Craig in and go down the fucking rabbit hole, right out of the gate. He's talking, a language that, well, it hasn't really been invented yet. It's being built as it's being flown.
He's creating it. Okay.
Dude, all these different people are creating this language because they're all coming from different disciplines. Because if you look at, DNA, 5 years ago, nobody could afford it, right? I mean, you could send it in for these, family DNA stuff, but that's a business built on a machine that creates an algorithm, blah, 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 right? But it's not normal language. You're dealing with a lot of different disciplines that understand, like, if you take the DNA and you plug it into a machine learning algorithm, it can tell you that the prospects of this bacteria performing nitrogen cycling in situ is 50%, 30%, 100%, right? So now all of a sudden you have a way to correlate the DNA, what you've discovered, with what the potential could be of any said given question.
Right.
Will it restore soil? Will it bind up heavy metals? Will it provide nutrient cycling? Will it be a phosphate solubilizer? Will it be a nitrogen fixer? Blah, 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 blah. So he brings in a couple of his friends and associates, and we start to create a team, which he nicknamed M5. So it's macro, micro, I'm missing something. Macro, micro, microbe, microscopy, not mRNA, and then metabolite. Or machine learning, metabolite, machine learning. All right, so those are 5 M's. And it was brilliant because it basically says we've done the first 3 steps, right? We've done the macro, the micro, and the microbiology, but we haven't done metabolics, which is the genomics, and then the machine learning, which is the ability to have what's called human read data. Now that's a whole new word, right? When I first heard that, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, human read? Well, then you get into what's called long chain or short chain. And what that is the volume of information. And again, these are ones and zeros, people. There's ones and zeros. And the volume could be, or the length, they call it the length of the read, could be, you're dealing with billions of pieces of information. So that read could be billions of bits long. Well, that's too much for us to understand. So we go back to short reads where we have less information, and then we have to understand depth too here. So depth is the amount of times that has been replicated to prove that this algorithm is true. So
same
just
result.
Ones and zeros doesn't mean that's truth. The depth, how many times that has been replicated, is what's proving that is true or not true. So you have length and you have depth. And if you have tons of depth but very little length, you've got really good data, but it's not robust. It's very granular. It's very small. It's not telling you what you need to know. It's telling you something's there, but it's just not giving you.
They'll tell you what it is.
Right. The long read is giving you. Now you're getting, I'm getting meat, potatoes, apple pie, fucking whiskey. Right? I'm getting a whole meal, right?
Christmas dinner, baby.
Yeah, Christmas dinner, right? But again, if you don't have the depth, it ain't Christmas dinner. Could be McDonald's. We don't know. Yeah. Right. So this is where I've been the last 3 or 4 months, like learning a whole new language, understanding these processes. There's like RNA. Well, what's the difference between, RNA and DNA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the big difference between RNA and DNA is as soon as you look at RNA, it's gone. Can't be replicated, can't be stored. You destroyed it. Well, the other big piece is RNA is like a direct message, a series of directions.
Right.
Do this, and this will happen.
Right.
All right. So RNA, or excuse me, DNA can change that message, that RNA message. Think of it like a recipe book. This is the way Craig describes it. You got your grandma's recipe book, right? So all these different recipes in there, right? But it's one cookbook. So that's the DNA. So I want a recipe on apple pie. I pull the page out, or I make a photocopy of it. Now I have the message, right? But once I use that message, and it's now a piece of paper, it's not in a book that's being protected. Paper could get water spilled on it. Any reason it could get lost, blown away in the wind. So that's another way to understand that RNA is a short message that is not long-lived. And literally, if you look at it, if you test it, you've obliterated. So you'll never be able to verify that message again. So it has to be handled in a lot more scrupulous conditions,
right?
If you're going to get anything out of it. Because again, if you don't have depth, then you don't really know. So that's been, that has been a real challenge as a person of 60 years old who's still trying to keep up with understanding of the microbial shifts, because every day new papers, more information comes out, more correlations between different groups. And so I'm trying to keep up with the best I can with that, and then trying to now
I'm
learn.
surprised you still have hair, Leighton. Come on.
I got a bald spot up here, buddy. Don't worry. Poe and Scotch and Night help a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, buddy. Right? Come on. So anyway, that's where we are with the Muncher. Is we've got really exciting news coming up. I've told you everything I can, but I can
probably
also
too much.
Yeah, probably too much, but whatever. And we're all among family here. And I would say that the other side of that Muncher story is that we are unlocking. We are boldly going where no one has gone before. We're trying to correlate DNA with soil food web. Monumental. Because now if you have a microscopy and Andy goes, okay, you got this, these are your counts. We can say, okay, based on our DNA testing of soil food web organisms, and we can say the Muncher has these organisms but doesn't have those, well, we can add them, right? We can amend it, or we can, put more compost in the beginning to get those organisms to come out in the end. So it's just like unlocking the ability for the Muncher to directly target, like a sniper, a specific condition or issue. And that again would be, that was something that Elaine has dreamed about for years, but it's just been too expensive. Yeah. And then on top of that, like Craig is amazing. He's got all of these different, like we talked about today. I call them feathers, right? I go, you don't have a feather in your hat. You have a fucking headdress, dude. Like you have all of these different friends that come from all these different groups that are all looking to do the similar things. That once we get, a little bit further along down the path, you'll be able to pull this feather for here, this feather for that, this bead to that person. And basically we barely be paying for these tests because like he has the ability to extract. This person has the ability to read. That person has the computing data. Because that's another thing is you need fucking huge computing power to pull those freaking 8 million freaking ones and zeros down to that long read down into usable human read information. If you don't have that computing data, you can't get it to that point. Then you need the machine learning to say, okay, based on these long reads at this depth, you can expect these results from this community that you have uncovered in this particular product. And again, that goes back to, all right, what was the input? Holy fuck. Now you're like, oh God, if I add a pepper instead of a tomato, well, this salad's going to be real fucking hot. And it's not going to be as, sweet and juicy. And so, then all of a sudden now you can start to steer your inputs based on the knowledge that you've acquired through the M5 process. Now we gave their fucking machine rocket engines, right? They can fucking launch because they can go to any client anywhere. Like one of the things that they're, well, again, some of the team members have made interesting observations about is that California, for whatever reason, I think is the world's third largest olive producer. Everybody loves olive oil, right? Everybody loves olives, right? Well, there's a problem during production of olive oil. You create these phenolic compounds, which are pretty fucking toxic, dude. They're pretty ugly, and they don't break down. So basically, you have like radioactive waste. What do you do with it? You can't bury it. You can't leave it above ground. You can't shoot it into space. It's too expensive. What do you do with it, right? And so they have this incredible waste stream of all of this phenolic compounds that they can't get rid of. So one of the principals that was working with me came back and said, hey, if we unlock this market, you're talking about probably $1 billion a year market just in this one fucking tiny little group. What do you think? So I was like, oh, fuck. Well, based on the tests we've done to date, it appears, or my hypothesis, and not mine, this is the M5 crew too.
Right.
Our hypothesis is that it should break those phenolic compounds down and render them what we call
inert,
bioavailable, so inert, right? And so that was like another, oh fuck, right? Oh man, that's a whole nother entity.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull you back off of this in case, because we don't want to say too much, and we'll go to a question. I'm gonna just get right off of this. So, a 24-inch high system, 7-inch A horizon, 14-inch O horizon. What should our hydrometer or aerometer read for the A horizon, and how low can I let it go for dryback during a flower?
Okay, so it looks like mathematically you broke the formula a little bit. It's supposed to be 1, 2, 4. So in a 24-inch high tall pot, your E horizon should be 1/7. So my brain is a little puppy gone right now. So that's 7 into 24. What is that? 3.
7 into 24. 21 would be 3 times.
Right. 24.
So 3 1/4.
So you're 3.4. So 3.5. So it looks like you did all right then, because you got 21. Yeah. So you're close enough. And the reason I'm such a stickler on that is because that worked. Like I've had other people change that recipe a little and complain that the results were not as, they weren't as happy with the results as what other people have had. And I've questioned them. Well, did you change something? And 9 times out of 10, it came back, oh yeah, we did this. No, you didn't follow the instructions, motherfucker. So don't get pissed at me. Like I gave you the instructions. I don't know what to expect if you change those.
Right.
So after the disclaimer, bottom line is that if you're in the A horizon, you would be in what's called an RT, regular tension hydromel. If you are in the O horizon, you're in the LT. So you have to make sure you got the right aerometer or you're fucked. As far as specific drybacks, I have not done a tremendous amount of testing on this. That would be a question that you should direct toward Tom Landry and that other gentleman that we had on the show when they tag teamed it, because both of those guys have been playing around with these units of measurement in real time on scale. My experience with an aerometer was during COVID. I wanted to understand, or I wanted to find the sweet spot for protozoa production in a bioreactor, in a compost, a controlled compost cylinder. And so basically I was looking for, how much moisture, how much heat, and where would that two-dimensional projections hit. And it ended up, I found that after a few months of testing, that between 85 and 105, 110 was an acceptable parameter as far as temperature is concerned. And the moisture was about 60 to 70% moisture. I tended to like the lower temp. My absolute home run was 85 to 90 degrees, 70, pretty hard 70% moisture. At that level, I got incredible protozoa production. So I would take a drop of the extract and put it under a microscope, and I would have often 50 protozoa in one view. I mean, you're talking tens of millions of protozoa per unigram. Mm-hmm. That's insane. Like soil food web standards, that's unachievable. But that's what I used the aerometer for, was finding that. So as far as in flower, in veg, I'm not qualified to answer that question, unfortunately.
So more reach out to Tom Landry and those guys that are doing it at scale to get that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, make sure you do have the right aerometer for wherever you're measuring, because if you don't, you're not going to get results that are usable.
Okay. So we'll jump to this one. What is Leighton's thoughts on crop rotation?
Well, be honest, I think it's critical. I mean, if you want to talk about regenerative agriculture, it's critical. You can't do it in monocropping. You just can't. You need animals. You need rotating crops, minimalized tillage, roller crimper. There's techniques to doing it, but as far as ever regenerating soil using monocropping, forget it. It's not. You can be sustainable, but that's flatlining. Again, you're not improving. You're not getting better, but you're not sinking. So hopefully that answers that question.
Well, I think there's another aspect as well. Like I know up in Canada, for the organic, they have to, they've got brassicas here. They can't put brassicas in that area again. They have to change out. But then in some ways, and they're also working up the soil, you're changing the biology, because each, like brassicas have a biology that works best for brassicas.
Oh yeah, big time.
So on your crop rotation in a row like that, try to stick within the same, basic plant genre, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Succession.
In that same success, yeah.
Plant succession.
Yeah, and then you're sticking with that biology that works best for that group of plants.
Agreed. You're not reinventing the wheel every time. So you'd want to be using other brassicas or wetland species plants, something early succession, and then come back the year after and then replant it with your cash crop. But not all farmers can do that. Like if you're leasing land or you're in a small environment where you have to produce X every year, that's difficult. And again, when I'm asked that question, I'm thinking, hundreds of acres. I'm not thinking about a homestead farm where it's no problem. You can easily just shift around. But I love your advice about being more careful about succession. But really, in most row crops, and I'm not talking about trees, right? I'm talking about literally 90-day crops. The vast majority of them, like a 1-to-1 ratio, one fungi to one bacteria. I have to use that because I don't have any other parameters, right? We don't have all the proof that that's the perfect situation or scenario, but it is pretty clear that you do need some saprophytic fungi as well as bacteria in conjunction if you're going to have a healthy soil that's going to produce decent nutrient levels in your food.
Yeah. So we're talking about terra preta. So we're digging 18-inch and 2-foot deep, 2-foot wide trenches inside or filling with leaves, old wood chips, and cannabis biomass. We're making and inoculating biochar with yeast, lactobacillus, and purple non-sulfur bacteria.
Very cool. So you basically created what's called a Wenner-Grenski column, which is something where the purple sulfur bacteria live on the bottom. Lactose are on the top, I believe, close to it, and it's a feedback loop. So in this situation, everything is going back, or should be doing this way, back through the whole system. It's an ecosystem. You basically created an ecosystem. Now, the interesting thing about that is when you add in chips and leaves and stuff, you're creating moisture or water holding capacity. So that's going to shift a little bit, but we know for sure the lacto is going to do fine. The yeasts may come and go. You may lose the yeast. The purple sulfur guys, they'll do fine in that environment because if it goes anaerobic, no big deal. And I would have to believe in a wet environment. Again, I don't know where you live in the world. In a very wet environment, that is going to be more of an anaerobic digester than an aerobic digester because you've dug a hole. And again, I don't know your soil conditions. I don't know if it's a draining soil. Like one of the things that I do often when I have a new client is I'll dig a hole. Depending on what I'm trying to do, I try to find the horizons. So if I really need a lot of data, I'll get a backhoe or an excavator and I'll dig a ditch and really try to find out where my different horizons are. If I don't have the capacity to do that, I'll just dig a small hole, like a compound bucket size or a 5-gallon bucket size, as deep as I can, and making sure that I've gotten all the loose dirt out. And then I pour water in there, 2-3 gallons of water. And then I wait and watch and time. If I'm drained within half an hour, I would say that's okay, because that would pass what we call a septic system design perk test. Yeah. And it'll also give you generally, if water infiltrates, how long will it sustain before it's gone, right? How long will that rain last in that soil system before you need another rain or you need to supplement water? So the other test that I often do in this scenario is what's called an infiltration test. So that's where you take a pipe and you pound it down in the soil deep enough, like an inch or two, just so that when you pour water in it, the water doesn't run out from underneath it, right? That's really important if you're going to do an infiltration test. So I'll often take a 2-inch piece of PVC pipe. I'll cut it, a couple of 6-8 inches long. I'll bevel the bottom edge so it's easy to pound in the soil. That flat edge pounding into hard soil, you're gonna break the pipe trying to do it, right? So create a nice sharp edge on it. I usually use a block of wood on top, so again, I'm not like breaking off chunks of the PVC when I'm beating it with a sledgehammer, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
And I beat it down until I can take the pipe that's sticking out and I can't wiggle it. Like I don't like get after it, but I'm like,
it's snug, it's tight.
Yeah, right. Pretty rigid, like, shake.
Yeah.
Once I can't get it to move much, unless I really get aggressive, then I'll pour about an inch of water into it, sometimes 2. But again, what I want to do is measure for 1 inch or 2, depending on what you want. But 1 inch is generally enough. But 1 inch isn't always easy to do. Sometimes you have to go a little bit more. Like you're in the field, you're trying to pour water, you can't really get your finger in there to see how deep where the soil is. So try to shoot for 1. If you hit 2, it's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now time it again. Now basically what you're replicating is if we got 1 or 2 inches of rain, at a pretty quick pace within, an hour, which is or less, half an hour, it's not unrealistic for a rainstorm. How much will it penetrate? How much will it pull in? And that combined with your hybrid perk test will tell you, okay, I know my soil infiltrates great. That's good because now I'm not losing water. Because anytime you lose water, you have erosion.
Yeah.
You're losing your fertilizers. You're losing your organic matter, which is the top horizon, which is the most valuable horizon.
Yeah.
So that's important stuff to know. So I think if we knew all of that, I could answer that question way better for that gentleman. But unfortunately, we're missing those pieces of information. We don't know if the trench is on a slope, on a flat. Is there a hill behind it? Is it on top of the hill? All of these things would come into variation. But I think I've given you enough to say that I would tend to think that would be more like an anaerobic digester than an aerobic digester. If you did that on top of soil, instead of digging it, you'd have created a compost pile, an aerobic compost.
So let's just take a look at what Mr. Leighton Morrison has built in. When we had James Perkins on, we were talking about the chorus that you put together. You made a bunch of videos. The system that you show in that, is that a hugelkultur system? Is it above ground, below ground? Explain what if people were to go to his website and take your chorus. And I have a discount code for it, by the way, for anybody that wants it. What would they get out of Leighton Morrison's chorus on learning how to compost?
So that was my cheat at Rodale.
Okay.
So all of Elaine's students were given a bioreactor, a column of wire, and they were told to make their own compost in that circular wire. It was 3 feet tall, 20-inch diameter. I don't have the exact dimensions. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to see, I think it was a 1-to-1. So she wanted to see saprophytic fungi, bacteria. She wanted to see nematodes. She wanted to see protozoa production. And so this was like, I don't know, probably 2, 3, 4 weeks into my stint down there. Remember, I was there for 18 months, 3 to 4 days a week. Yeah. We were in our weekly Thursday morning meeting where the kids came in. They explained where they were on their experiment or their project or whatever sheet had signed them to do. And they would often bring in it if it was past the 30, 60 days. I forget what it was that particular aspect of their education was about. But this Thursday, they had all brought in their vial with their 1 mil sample of their compost for her to inspect under the microscope. And so she got pissed and basically, was yelling at them. Well, not yelling, but strongly speaking that, hey, you guys, you know better than this. I mean, you're here because you're a protege, because I selected you based on your education and what you have accomplished. So what is this? Come on, you guys. I can do it. I know you can do it. And so being a stupid idiot I am, I'm like, hey, can I join in the competition? And Elaine was like, of course you can, Lee. Just brush me off, right? And so the meeting continued, and then we all went on our way. So her instructions were, all right, go fucking rip your piles apart, start over again. Right. So all the long faces, everyone's like, walking out of the fucking meeting, just beat to hell.
They got spanked.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I got a fucking new challenge, man. You know me, I'm all about fixing and solving puzzles, man. This is just a giant fucking puzzle. So I build my compost pile using that methodology. I didn't use the cage. And I also added some fish manure from a local farm. I got some soil inoculant. I went around like I encourage everyone to do, and just as diverse as you can find, both greens and browns. And that's what I did. I went on a fucking mission to find as much different diversity as I possibly can. So I had a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I made that pile almost identical to the one I did in Perkins' video. It's about 6 feet long, couple feet tall, 2.5 feet tall. And my thought behind building it that way was convection. So I laid down the branch, the rotten log, and then put the fresh branches on the top of it to create a teepee so that I could get cool air underneath so I could push the heat out the top. Because that was the thing that I didn't like about Elaine's design was too much area was exposed to air. The vast majority of my area is exposed to the soil, not to the air. Remember, they're building a column. I'm building it horizontally on the ground. And they all had heat issues. That was always the fucking issue. Like my buddy at the time, he was a drinking and smoking buddy. One night, it was like Friday night. We're supposed to be, it was Thursday night because Thursday mornings we had the meeting with the kids. And then Thursday night, the adults, sometimes the kids would come, would go down to the local beer facility and have a couple cocktails and dinner, right? And laugh. And, it was Thirsty Thursday, right? I mean, we didn't get plowed. We just had a few drinks and loosened up, right? The conversations I had with that bar with Elaine were fucking amazing. Like I still to this day can't believe I had that opportunity, right? Loosen her up with a little bit of fucking beer and then boom, the shit flew, right? So that night we were late for the bar meeting and I'm pulling out of there and I see Richard like taking the shovel with it, like a pitchfork with just the end of not the pitchfork end, but the handle end, stabbing his fucking pile like a maniac, just running around and stabbing it. And I'm like, you look like a fucking maniac. What the fuck are you doing, dude? Why would you be stabbing your pile?
It's too hot.
It's too hot. And if Elaine saw me, she'd kill me. Oh, did I laugh my fucking ass off? So I promise, I go, dude, I won't say nothing. And it's too late now. She can't yell at him. So he's safe. But I knew the heat was the issue. Like, and she made that clear in that meeting, that Thursday morning meeting, that basically saying to them, my hypothesis is you guys aren't keeping your C to N ratio. You're getting too fucking hot. And you can't turn these things, right? So turning them is against the rules. So it's basically teaching them proper math on that relationship between nitrogen and carbon when you're building a pile. If you do it right, it gets to a certain temperature and then it just cools down and starts to produce the organism you're looking for.
Yeah.
So my, Hugel version, because Hugel culture is to take logs on the surface of the earth, not digging holes, not burying them, just laying the logs down on the surface of the soil and then piling soil on top of them, planting them and mulching it so that 6 months later you come back and you've got your crops. A lot of people's making these mistakes of, I'm going to dig a hole and put the log in there. Now you just created an anaerobic fucking nightmare, right?
Yeah.
You want this to drain. The reason the log is there is to hold moisture, but it's not to sit in a swamp. It's supposed to be above ground, but it holds the rain in until it dries out. And then by then you're back. It's been 6 months.
Yeah.
So that was the philosophy behind that. And then whatever it was, the next time we had that meeting, and we all sat down and I held my sample to last and basically, same thing. No, fail. and she looks at me. Uh-oh.
Okay, did I lose
Ken?
you, Leighton? Yeah. I'm still here.
I'm frozen.
Yeah, your picture's frozen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you still.
All right. Well, as long as you can hear me.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm frozen, but whatever. It's asking for passwords.
Oh, you got something running in the background then. Oh.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. So go on with the.
Right.
What did Leighton came to your sample?
Yep. So Elaine came to my sample, and she spent, I don't know, freaking 20 seconds looking at it, picks her head up, and in total disgust goes, how can you all not do this? And he can, and he knows nothing of this shit. What is wrong with you people? Leighton, what the fuck did you do? Right? She was pissed that I did it, right? And I said, honestly, I said, I cheated. And she was quiet for a minute, and she looked at me in the eyes, and then she said, okay, what did you do? How did you do this? What was your cheat? And I basically explained to her, this is what I did. And when I was done doing it this way, I watered it, and I threw a bunch of native seeds and seeds that I found laying around in various parts of Rodale on the top of it. And those seeds grew in. And she hesitated, but then she said, look, Leighton, I teach that you need to cover the compost. You have to protect it against moisture loss, and you don't want plants to be stealing the nutrition from this compost pile. You're building a nutritious compost pile. So if your plants are pulling nutrition out of it, then it's not going to be the same value it would have been if you had no plants on it.
Right.
And I said, well, I can totally understand that. That makes complete sense to me. Mm-hmm. But you've also taught me that the key to creating biological compost is the rhizosphere, right? You want all those organisms that live in the rhizosphere. So if I plant cover crop my pile, then I'm providing miles of rhizosphere for the organisms that you want to colonize and multiply exponentially.
Yeah.
She was pissed.
You got her too, okay?
Yeah. I overthought or outthought, based on her teachings, how to skin the cat or build a better mousetrap, right?
Yeah, you took it to the next level.
I leveled up, dude. I leveled up. So that night, when we were sitting around having our cocktails, and she always loved the bourbon stout beer there. She was having her second bourbon stout. She looked at me and smiled and said, you're all right, kid. I think you're probably one of the best students I've ever had or met, because you have no formal education. If you had had a formal college degree, you would have been told you can't do this stuff, and you would have just assumed you can't do it because you were taught that. Because you were never told you can't do something, you're a wide open slate. You'll try anything, right? Mm-hmm. And even when I was told I couldn't do it, I still tried it because I didn't have it beaten into my head that I can't do it. Yeah. I only was told once, hey, you can't do that. I'm like, well, just because you said I can't do it doesn't mean I can't do it. And maybe you did it wrong or differently than I can do it.
Yeah, just because you can't do it doesn't mean I can't do it.
Right. I gotta try, dude. It's the nature of a friggin' entrepreneur is to always question everything and try everything. I mean, that's how we learn. That's how we move forward. If we don't, then we don't go anywhere. So, a couple of encouraging things for the audience to keep in mind is just because someone says you can't do it, just make sure that you understand what they're saying you can't do, right? Because that's important. You have to ask the right questions. Like, if someone says, "Oh, you can't put a match in a gas can," well, there's a good reason. Because if you do, that gas can is going to catch on fire, right? But if they say you can't smoke a cigarette around an open gas can, I'm going to question that. Yeah. Because one is an open flame, the other is an amber. I mean, when I was a kid, dude, I pumped gas, to make money, in high school. I had a fucking butt hanging out of my mouth while I'm pumping gas into these cars. Mm-hmm. I never fucking blew up, right? But sure as shit, if I was playing with gas, I mean, I could put cigarette butts out in it, but as soon as I lit a flame, that gas was gone, right? So you have to ask the right questions. You have to make sure that you're truly understanding what they're saying you can't do, because there are times that you will get yourself in trouble if you don't listen to that piece, and then you do it. You're kind of wasting your time.
And what I like here is Roller City saying they're more like guidelines anyway.
All right, I had this conversation with a gentleman today about the difference between academics or academia and the public. Like in academia, there are a lot of understoods, right?
Yeah.
So you have to look at it like a gradient. Like there are suggestions, there are rules, and there are guidelines.
Yeah.
Right? So what is the definition between a guideline and a rule, or a guideline and a suggestion? And that's kind of where you should wrap your head around that when you're asking the question of, can I put a cigarette butt out in a gasoline can? Mm-hmm. Right? Is this a rule? Like, I know it's gonna fucking blow up because everyone before me has tried this, has blown themselves up, or is this a suggestion or a guideline? Like, hey, you probably shouldn't play with fire around gas cans, which includes embers, because we know cigarette butts can start forest fires. That ember can ignite, and you know that's important to understand. Like, say I had a gas can in my trunk in the middle of summer, and I opened that gas can up with a cigarette butt in my mouth, and that gas had been under pressure and vaporized and filled my trunk, and I took a drag of that fucking cigarette as the trunk lid blew open, and that vaporized gasoline hit that ember, because the ember is now sparking, right? Because as you draw on it, you get that little crackle, snap, pop.
Yeah.
Boom. And a buddy of mine had that happen to him. And he came back to me. He had no eyebrows. His hair was burned back an inch or so on his scalp. His nose hairs were gone. He was a mess, right? He took a lot of,
no doubt.
Yeah, he took a lot of flack the next Monday on school. But he came to me. He was like, "You motherfucker. You told me you were smoking fucking cigarettes when you pump gas." And I'm like, "Yeah, I was, but I didn't create a fucking vaporized fucking car bomb, dude. When you left that gas can in your trunk in the middle of summer, what do you think fucking happened, right? What didn't your nose tell you? Like, as soon as you open the trunk, like, whoa, that's pretty powerful. And what the fuck were you doing drawing on it, right? I mean, I don't sit there at the fucking gas tank going, stoking on my fucking cigarette. I just have it hanging out of my mouth while I'm pumping. Yeah. Right? A big difference there. So there's a difference between, a suggestion and a guideline. Common sense needs to be a part of that equation.
That's what's lacking in most people, unfortunately.
Right? All right, I can't see what time it is. My computer screen's all fucked up because this browser has lost connection. Maybe I could reload, or.
Well, you're probably gonna. We're at 1:58, so I think we can cut her here, brother.
Okay, sounds good. Now I didn't read the chat at all today. Sorry, people. Ken had me on my toes today, so to say. But I do want to wish all that you guys out there, boys, girls, men, women, whatever, right? I want to wish you sincerely a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I wish only the best for all of you in 2024. Yeah, as I said to my friend today, I said, I have never been so excited and so horrified and scared at the same time about what the future brings. For science, it's just like a kid in a candy shop, and then you start looking on a global scale, and it's fucking horrifying. All the things that are being discussed right now about the future of humanity, the future of control, and who's going to have that control, and what are they going to do with that control? Yeah, it's pretty scary. So, again, from the bottom of my heart, I bless you, wish you the merriest of Christmas and the best 2024 that you can possibly have.
And everybody's saying happy holidays, etc. And Leighton, you're a blessing to this community. Your knowledge is something we value, extremely. You're such a wondrous, giving individual. I hope you have the best for Christmas and in the new year. And guys, we'll be back in the new year. Leighton's taking 2 weeks off. And we're back with Stefan Burns is going to do the first show in the new year. That's our biophysicist that we had on a few weeks ago. So you guys are going to want to check that out.
Yeah, he goes deep quick, man.
Oh, yes, yes. Resonant frequencies. Here we go.
Oh, yeah. There was,
guys. Oh, go ahead, Leighton.
I was going to say there was some recent information that I've been seeing floating around about this connection to all of it. And so, yeah, it's going to be fun to have it back on.
You bet. Okay, guys, I'm going to end the stream there. Have a very Merry Christmas. I will be on Christmas Day. I'll send Leighton the link in case he wants to jump on and say hi. But I'll be on Christmas Day in the R&D Grow, just basically to say hi for Christmas. But other than that, we will see you guys on Wednesday with Andy for the Gardens, the Untold Story.